In the lands east of the Indus, houses are built not of mud or brick, but of honor. Every action, every step, every breath is surveilled by one law. लोग क्या कहेंगे? Honor or izzat is different from personal virtue. It is a form of prestige, that is, the degree of respect that a man commands from others. The man whose glorious heroics are sung by the bards is the king. The one who guards his gleaming fortune from the envy of thieves is the merchant. The laborer who merely tills the soil is the servant. So, honor as a social force creates a ranked hierarchy. And at the summit sits the divine architect who naturalizes and ritualizes this social order into a sacred order, the learned elder, the priest. But what happens when the king falls in battle and the merchant's wine is poisoned by his rival? What happens when the priest is recalled to the heavens by his gods? What happens to legacy? Gripped with the terror that his name would die with him, the honorable man desperately sought a currency that transcends death. His honor must be immortalized in a vessel more permanent than a crown or a coin, in the purity of blood and the permanence of land. And so,
you are the giver of strength. You are the one and the only savior, the one who saves us from our temptations.
आप जाइए बड़े बड़े जमींदारों के घरों की औरतें जिनको ईश्वर ने बहुत पैसा दिया है, बहुत इज्जत दिया है, उनके घर की महिलाएं भी आती हैं किसी गैर आदमी के सामने तो पल्लू झाड़ के आती हैं।
औरत की सबसे बेहतरीन चीज ये है कि उसको कोई अजनबी मर्द देख न सके। Wear the proper dress code of India.
So this is an improper dress code that she is wearing.
Yes.
Feminist movement definitely has some issues, and I don't know when it went from being pro-women to anti-men. That's dangerous.
बड़ा मुश्किल है। 100 में कोई 2-4 कन्याएं ऐसी होंगी जो अपना पवित्र जीवन रखकर किसी पुरुष को समर्पित होती होंगी। कैसे वो सच्ची बहू बनेगी?
थियरी ऑफ सोशल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट, पत्नी से पति का ये सौदा तय हुआ है कि तुम मेरा घर संभालो, मुझे सुख दो, मैं तुम्हारे पेट पानी की व्यवस्था ठीक करूंगा और तुमको सुरक्षित रखूंगा।
आप जब वोट करने जाए तब पल भर के लिए उस निर्भया को याद करना।
आसन लोकसभा से एनडीए के सिर्फ प्रज्वलन रेवन्ना।
चरित्रहीन स्त्री की पहचान उसके अंगों से करना कठिन हो सकता है, लेकिन कुछ संकेत उपलब्ध हो सकते हैं। उनके आंखों में स्नेह की कमी हो सकती है। उनकी मुस्कान अपने पति के लिए खाली और अस्वस्थ लग सकती है। उनका व्यवहार असभ्य और आदर्शों के विपरीत हो सकता है।
And so, the quest for immortality converged at a single territory: woman. Every house of honor needs a keeper of virtue. As Manu says, offspring, performance of religious rites, conjugal happiness and heavenly bliss, all these depend on the wife alone. A good woman is a chaste lady. To preserve the house of honor, she obeys the code of conduct laid down by the learned elders, the code of Stri Dharma. Sometimes, her conformity is passive. She does not eat before her husband, because while he eats, she is in the kitchen, searing fresh rotis. She cannot sit before her husband, for she does not have a seat of her own. She must wait to take her place beside him. She is not able to fall asleep before her husband, because her mind is crowded with unfinished chores of the day and the impending clamor of the children at dawn. She never speaks her husband's name, because that was the first prohibition she learned as a bride. And now the habit is so deeply ingrained that the word itself feels foreign on her tongue. If her husband scolds or rebukes her, she does not answer back. For what purpose will it serve other than destroying the peace of the house? If her husband beats her, she bears it. For what else is there to do? The passive conformist has trained her body and emotions into mechanical numbness. The honorable man's demands slowly close in on her until they suffocate the life out of her. But this is not enough. A woman merely confined to the house is not truly guarded. The ultimate victory is not a woman who is controlled, but a woman who controls herself, who believes her submission is a mark of distinction. The ideal woman is one whose conformity is militant. The trad wife is a happy homemaker, an exemplary mother, a devout sadhvi. She is determined to prove herself as loyal, useful, obedient, fanatical even, in the service of men. When he scolds her, she is grateful for his instruction. When he beats her, she welcomes it as punishment that will redeem her for her sin. She dedicates her life to the ideal of pativrata, whose labor, heart, soul, body, and children all exist for her husband. The elders have promised her that this is the only way she can dwell in heaven beside her husband. Uma Chakravarti writes, Pativrata may be regarded as the ideological parda of the Hindu woman, as chastity and wifely fidelity came to be regarded as the means to salvation. It was also the means by which the inequitous and hierarchical structure was reproduced with the complicity of women. This is how the good woman ties herself to the house of honor, with a rope made of infinite self-sacrifice, unspoken grief, and repressed resentment. And she clings to her noose with incredible tenacity, because it is only through these persons, institutions, and traditions that her only currency, her chastity, has value. So, if a man's rank is determined by his honor, and his honor is stored in his women, then a man's status is ultimately judged by the conduct of his wife. But there is one woman who is no one's wife. She is the pollution upon which the code of purity is built, the profane shadow that haunts the priest's sacred order, the fallen woman, the harlot.
आदमी को नहीं देखेगा ऐसे जब कोई पूछेगा तो भाई नहीं घर में तुम जाओ बोलेगा सिर्फ बाद में होटल के अंदर आएगा तो एक नंबर बदमाश पूरे में बदमाशी मैं एक नंबर बदमाश सबसे एक नंबर बदमाश
The bad woman is the seductress. She stands at her door, half veiled in the shadow, facing the public road like an enticing promise. Her body is red like an advertisement, her smile as a trap, and her eyes feel like they know a little too much. She wanders through the night when decent women sleep, calling out to men with the soft cruelty of a siren. She lingers by the red lights, waiting for the cars to slow down, pick her up, and whisk her away for the night. Prostitution makes it possible for a man to avail pleasure at his convenience from a woman whom he compensates with money or material gifts. There are many variations within prostitution. Courtesans, tabayefs, strippers, bar dancers, brothel workers, pornography actors. But whatever her name, the prostitute has always been a source of great anxiety among lawmakers and priests. This has to do with the Vedic understanding of women's innate nature, Stri Swabhava. The priests believed that the essence of the servant, for instance, was in harmony with his dharma, to serve. But the essence of woman was not harmonious. It was dangerous. Her nature was demonic, seductive, wild, and untamed. She was both alluring and corrupting, a creature of infinite appetite. The Stri Dharma was created precisely to domesticate this wicked nature of women, to discipline the biological female into a cultured, sanskari being, the chaste lady, the good wife. Woman is dangerous because her desire is dangerous. It holds the potential to disrupt the sacred institution of marriage and family, and with it, the entire social order, the hierarchy that upholds the social position of priests and servants. For by adultery is caused a mixture of the castes among men. Thence follows sin, which cuts up even the roots and causes the destruction of everything. To love freely is to endanger endogamous marriage, and with it, civilization itself.
दुनिया में अच्छा करेगा तो जगह नहीं मिलेगा, सबको लात मारने का उसको जगह मिलेगा। मैं दूसरे से लेगा, इतने मैं देगा नहीं लेगा इतना।
The priests built their moral order on the taming of the wild and wicked woman. But the priests could not exercise their own desire. To lay with the wife was a duty which had to be performed for the gods, the state, the ancestors, and to propagate as the future heirs to his wealth, children indisputably his own. But where such men love, they have no desire, and where they desire, they cannot love. They may respect their wife as a keeper of virtue, but their arousal, sexual hunger, and desire is towards the debased whore. Their great moral order, built on separating the sacred from the profane, could not even manage to separate the physical spaces between temples and brothels. The devadasi was a dancer who occupied a high ritual status within the temple. Though she was married to the god of the temple, she had patrons, priests and devotees who would be her sexual partners, essentially serving as a prostitute for the entire community. The devadasi belonged to a particular non-Brahmana but not untouchable caste, the men of which also performed functions such as drumming or playing musical instruments at the temple. Parey has observed that the devadasi represents the quintessential Shudra woman, ordained to serve the upper castes as a sexual slave. Her ritual degradation was a perpetual reminder of the dishonor of the Shudra man and Shudras as a caste. So, we can see how the code of conduct, Stri Dharma, was never a single moral law for all women. Every caste was bound to its own customs, ensuring that each remained in its ordained place. This was because the reproductive practices of the laboring castes served a different purpose than those of the priests and kings. For the upper castes, the goal was to preserve honor. For the lower castes, it was to ensure a supply of labor. Widow remarriage, for instance, was forbidden among the upper castes but enforced among the working castes. Manu considered levirate marriages as fit only for cattle and the Shudras, because there was a need to multiply cattle and servants who actually ploughed the fields, for it was their bodies that produced the harvest which enriched their masters. Another example lies in how the same act, intercaste relations, carries opposite meanings depending on who commits it. When a lower caste man is even suspected of desiring an upper caste woman, it provokes hysteria, lynching, and honor killings for both the man and the woman. But for an upper caste man, casual or continuous use of a lower caste woman has always been considered natural. This is because lower caste women are not grihinis, family women. Parshurama says, "As for the wives of the Brahmanas and other Dvijas, let the rule of chastity stand in regard to them. With other residents, let there be no rule of chastity." Uma Chakravarti writes, "As the sexual availability of lower caste women was part of the material structure of domination by the higher castes, it was something that both men and women of the lower castes were forced to accept. In Rajasthan, it was customary for the Rajput bride to enter her affinal household accompanied by a daroga woman, who would also be married to a daroga man in the same village. She worked in the mistress's household but was also expected to provide sexual services to the Rajput men of the household. This practice is neither ancient nor localized to feudal villages. Last year, in Karnataka's Hassan district, pen drives containing thousands of videos were thrown across parks, bus stops, and public squares. They were films recorded by the Janata Dal Secular's politician Prajwal Revanna, documenting his rape of at least 56 domestic workers, cooks, and gardeners. After the videos were leaked, some of the women spoke of their experience. They described how they were plucked out of their salaried jobs, brought into the Revanna household, and forced to work long hours without rest or pay. When one woman tried to leave, Revanna's wife sent the police to evict her family. This is, after all, her Stri Dharma. A chaste woman shall never associate intimately with a washerwoman, a harlot, a female ascetic, or a fallen woman.
वो क्या सोचता है उसके दिल में दिमाग में यही है मैं जो कुछ मर्जी करूं लेकिन जो मेरी औरत है वो चार दीवारी के अंदर ही रहेगी
सबके सावित्री चाहिए मतलब अपनी औरत सिर्फ एक ही मर्द के साथ सोनी चाहिए
अभी क्या ये तो दुनिया का बनाया हुआ है कि भाई बाजार में बैठी वो वेश्या जो घर में समाज में आके बैठी है चार अच्छे आदमी से मिलती है अपना घर संभालती है उससे अच्छी औरत की जाती है
मर्द कितने के भी साथ सोएगा मॉरली तो सही नहीं है ना गलत है दोनों को इक्वल राइट्स होना चाहिए पर आप क्या समझते हैं मैं वही सावित्री
The ancient archetypes of the princess and the prostitute have reformed themselves in every era. When the colonial encounter unsettled India's social order, the dichotomy resurfaced as the Bharatiya Nari and the Western woman. Vivekananda writes, there lie before her various strange luxuries, new manners, new fashions, dressed in which moves about the well-educated girl in shameless freedom. On the one side is the independence of Western society. On the other, the extreme self-sacrifice of the Aryan society. And so, from the burning heat of colonial shame, a new woman was born.
बहनों, भाइयों और साथियों, आप लोग जो ये भारत माता की जय के नारे लगा रहे हैं, ये अच्छी बात है। पर आप ये भी जानते हैं कि इन नारों का मतलब क्या है? कौन है भारत माता? किसकी जीत चाहते हैं आप सब? बताइए, मैं भी जानना चाहता हूं।
Faced with the humiliation of foreign rule, nationalist scholars and leaders turned to the past to recover their lost dignity. To reclaim the honor stripped by the empire, they imagined a golden age, the wonder that was India. And at the heart of this dream stood the vessel of the nation's honor, the Bharatiya woman. Her mythos was forged in the flames of Sati. The image of the burning widow had seared itself into the European imagination. The colonizer, even though he used the image to justify his domination over a barbaric race that burnt their women alive, could never quite overcome his awe at the sight. Even for him, the widow in flames was a figure of fascination, a creature of divine devotion following her husband into the funeral pyre. His awe did not go unnoticed. The section of the colonized elite who were desperate for dignity in the eyes of the empire seized upon the figure of the burning widow to claim a moral victory. Vivekananda talks about how, in the West, witches were dragged and burned amidst jeering mobs, whereas in India, Hindu women voluntarily and cheerfully mounted their husbands' pyres. A race that produced Sita, even if it only dreamt of her, has a reverence for woman that is unmatched on earth. During the Sati abolition movement, Hindu nationalists opposed the colonial government and Hindu reformers, accusing them of violating the sanctity of the family. They began to recast Sati as the ultimate proof of womanly purity, and therefore of India's spiritual greatness. From this tension was born a new icon of resistance, the Aryan woman, the Rajput princess, the Hindu Nari. By attaining Sat, inner truth, she acquires a power that will protect her husband in his journey beyond. Thus, the Sati, the one who acquires this power, is the model of devotion to her husband, the true pativrata. For the Hindu nationalists, her sacrifice was not just personal, but a symbol of national virtue. Her courage, they said, enabled her man to fight to the bitter end. It emboldened him to know that his woman would rather burn than be ravished by the enemy, that she would choose death over dishonor. When the kingdom was surrounded by enemy armies, the Rani would gather the women and say, "Friends, we shall perform the Sati today. What happier fate can destiny hold for Rajput women? Let our enemies behold the sight. Our men are heroes, our women are chaste." In the 1947 chaos of riots and mass displacement, thousands of women were abducted, raped, and killed across the new borders. Between 47 and 55, over 30,000 women were recovered from both countries. The rescue of the abducted women was seen as a moral obligation, for it was a question of national honor. Muslim women were to be restored to the Muslim nation, and Hindu women to the Hindu nation. After forced abduction, there was forced return. The Indian government passed a law that women brought back from Pakistan should leave their children behind, since they were fathered by a Muslim. And those who were pregnant were made to undergo abortions. National salvation was achieved through this ritual of purification, and so the honor of the nation was restored. The modern Bharatiya woman is an heir to this lineage. She is no longer just the keeper of the house of honor, but a devotee in the service of the nation.
हिंदू कन्या की ओर अगर आंख उठा करके देखा तो आज से तुम्हारी औरतें हिंदुओं के बच्चे पैदा करेंगी, बिना निकाह के, बिना किसी फेरे के। किसी देश को बर्बाद करने के लिए उसमें मिसाइल, बम, बारूद, असला, गोला दागने की जरूरत नहीं है। आप उस देश की सामाजिक व्यवस्था, सांस्कृतिक व्यवस्था, शैक्षणिक व्यवस्था और पारिवारिक व्यवस्था को खत्म कर दो, वो समाज अपने आप खत्म हो जाएगा। और यही षड्यंत्र चल रहा है। बहन बेटियों के दिमाग खराब हो रहे। 2047 से पहले इस्लामिक देश कैसे बनेगा? महिला समाज को टारगेट करो, क्योंकि भारतीय परिवार व्यवस्था मानवता की सबसे बड़ी देन है।
ये इतनी बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है कि अगर इसको हम आजीवन भर भी चलाएंगे तो भी ये निपटेगी नहीं। भाई मैंने कम से कम जब से मैं लगी हूँ इसमें 4 साल से, उससे ज्यादा नहीं, कुछ 100-150 बर्थ हो चुकी हैं और अभी असंख्य, इनकी संख्या ही नहीं है कुछ भी।
Women as mothers and sisters and wives must be honored and protected, for they bear children to serve the motherland. The Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh has successfully combined her traditional role in the family with her patriotic duty, blending Desh Bhakti with Ram Bhakti. And the prostitute?
फिर यमधर्मराजन है, यमराजन ऊपर जाने का टाइम 3 लड़के मिलके ऊपर गया एक ही टाइम पे, 3 सत्यवाणी सावित्री। उसमें यमराज बुला के नीचे क्या क्या पाप किए तुम। वो बाजू में इसका असिस्टेंट एक चित्रगुप्त में, इसका पट्टी किधर निकालो, सर मैं कुछ पाप नहीं किया। एक आदमी को प्यार किया, उसको छोड़ के दूसरा को शादी किया। शादी का बाद मैं किसी को हमारा हंग से नहीं देखा, तो चांदी का दरवाजा दे दो। अंदर गया, चांदी का घर का अंदर इसको भेजा। फिर दूसरा आया, तुम क्या किया? मैं एक ही लड़का को प्यार किया, उसको शादी किया, किसी को मैं प्यार नहीं किया, किसी का मुंह नहीं देखा। इसको सोना का दरवाजा दे, एकदम गोल्ड का घर बना के दिया इसको। फिर बीच में कैमरा आर्टिस्ट गया, लास्ट तुम क्या क्या पाप किया? मैं नीचे किसी को दुख नहीं दिया, सबको मजा किया, सबको दिल में खुशी किया। सब दुनिया में कितना लड़का है, इतना को खुशी किया। अरे ये मेरा दरवाजा का चाबी दे बोला। मतलब नीचे सबको खुशी करके ऊपर आया ना, हमको भी थोड़ा खुशी कर। लास्ट वन को। ये सत्यवाणी सावित्री को क्या मिला? चांदी का दरवाजा मिला। दूसरा को क्या मिला? सोने का दरवाजा। खाली रेखा को मिला यमराज का दरवाजा मिला।
As the pativrata became the sacred wife of the nation, the sex worker became the nation's stain. Sex work was never directly outlawed. The priestly order was never truly able to eradicate the seductress, but was constrained by several convoluted legal regulations. In the law, sex work is a public nuisance. So, raid and rescue operations are conducted on brothels. These operations work as a moral cleanse for the localities where sex workers operate to prevent them from disturbing the sanctity of mainstream society. Women who are rescued are often subjected to abuse and humiliation by the police. They are forced out of their settlements and commanded to provide sexual favors to officials in return for their release or as a security for not being arrested. Under the delightfully named Sita, Suppression of Immoral Traffic Act of 1956, the magistrate can order the family, husband, or guardian of the rescued person to take charge of the woman. Otherwise, she is sent to a correctional facility. Successful rehabilitation provides marriage as an option, where sex workers can transform their wicked Stri Swabhava and become chaste ladies. Otherwise, the best that they can hope for is that they get employed as contractual cleaning employees or domestic workers, where they will continue to work for the honorable man of the house. Why does woman not rise in rage at everything that has been taken away from her? Why does she not scream at the sword stabbing into her flesh and turn the blade against the predators who hunt her as meat? Because to do so would mean the end of meaning itself. All the ideals that motivated her to deny herself would be indelibly stained with blood that she would have to acknowledge at last as her own. Women exist in a nexus of power systems. They are subordinated, but they also wield a degree of power through their menfolk. But these benefits are only available to good women. Compliance brings them gains, both material and symbolic. Deviance expels them from the material resources of the family. Attempting to strike a bargain, the good woman approaches the patriarch on his own terms. Her hope is that his murderous attention will focus on a woman who conforms less artfully, less willingly. She ransoms what remains of her life by promising indifference to the fate of bad women. The modern family, the molecule of modern society, is founded on barely concealed domestic slavery. The chaste wife, since she can never deny her husband's sex, differs from the ordinary courtesan only in that she does not let out her body on piecework as a wage worker, but sells it once and for all into slavery. Under the pious gaze of the good woman, the house of honor stands on the labor of women who sweep its floors, wash its clothes, and raise its children. One day, the sweeping will stop. The dust will rise, and the walls will begin to choke on their own sanctity. When the princess ceases to be chaste, and the prostitute ceases to feel shame, when our families are liberated from being temples of property, purity, and patriarchy, women's screams will set ablaze the house of honor on its own funeral pyre.